To appreciate the value of art and culture, we have to observe the lives of non-resident Indians or people of Indian origin who have migrated to other countries. Many move for better economic prospects. And when their children are born, they are at a loss why their children are not as Indian as they are. And how can they make them Indian? And this is when you realize the value of art and culture. Because what parents give their children informally, without even realizing it, unconsciously, is art and culture. And that is what a future bureaucrat is responsible for. Because going forward, when we say we are an independent country, what is it that we want to be independent for? We want to ensure that our art, our culture, our heritage goes forward, benefits us, and benefits the world at large. This includes our language, our stories. The stories are expressed through art, through performing arts, through theatre, through songs, through stories, through plastic arts like statues, paintings, literature. We do not want our culture to end up in the museum, which happens to many tribal communities around the world as they are taken over by what we call progress and development. And the only memory of those tribals is in the museum. The houses that they built, the tools that they used, the language that they spoke, the tattoos, the technology, the jewelry, their history, their customs, their practices, their deities, their rites of passage. Ask yourself, do you want India to end up in a museum? Or do you want India's culture to thrive in the future? That is what a future bureaucrat is bound to protect. A country is not just its resources, its wealth, its natural wealth, it is also its cultural wealth. And that is the job of a bureaucrat to protect. It's relatively simple. Sit down and look around in your house and ask yourself, what is the culture of your house and how do you express it? And you will realize, you will make a list of the following. You will make a list of your house, so that is architecture. You will make a list of the language that you speak. You will make a list of what happens in your kitchen. You will make a list of the customs that you have, the daily customs, the weekly customs, the monthly customs, the annual customs. You will make a list of beliefs that you have, beliefs that is communicated through rituals, through symbols, through stories. You will make a list of artifacts that you have in your house. The album pictures, the photographs, the objects that has been inherited in your family over generations. And that is how you may understand what is art and culture. Art and culture is not something which is out there, it is in your house. And that is very important to remember. The jewelry that your parents have, the books that your father has collected, the books that he read. How does your belief system get formed? What are the festivals that you celebrate? Have you seen coins change over time? You've seen how notes change over time, currency changes over time, documents change over time, technology changes over time. You have to ask yourself, what is culture? Culture is everything that humans create to live a decent life. And that is what culture is. Animals do not create culture, humans do. So we have, in Hindi you can use words like roti, kapda, makan, and then finally entertainment. So for roti, what do you have? So it's not just the kitchen utensils and the food that you eat. Roti also means the jobs that you do, the vocations that you do, the economic aspects of your life. Kapda is not just the clothes that you wear, but also the jewelry that you use, the way you decorate your body. It could be henna, the use of alta, the use of jewelry, which is peculiar to different parts of India, the different types of clothes that you wear. And then comes makan, that is house. This is where you talk about architecture, urban planning, design of temples, design of palaces, design of office spaces, design of roads and gardens. So you realize that it can be bunched together under these words. What about transport? Then how did you people travel? Did they travel by horses, elephants, chariots? What kind of carts did they have? So it's a memory of these things and how it was expressed. India was the land of elephants, so you would have things related to elephants. That is how you remember. Some of these things you can keep in the museum, and these become the artworks that you can keep in the museum. The carpets on the floor, the paintings on the wall, the objects that you use on a day-to-day level. Objects, we build nowadays. Uh, the parliament has been built. That's a cultural expression of today's democracy. You have big statues being built of politicians around India and of old Indian leaders. These are expressions of culture. So we are still creating culture. All these have to be listed out. What do we create to express ourselves as Indian? If you go abroad and someone says you are an Indian, what does it mean? What clothes will you wear? What songs will you sing? What stories will you share? This is how art and culture is expressed. Whenever a cultural or an artistic object is presented in front of you, I follow a couple of frameworks. The first framework I use is Desha Kala Guna. Desha is geography, Kal is history, and Guna is the qualities that it has. So I look at any object, I said, hey, when was this created? Where was this created? And Guna, what exactly is it? This leads me to, when we go into the guna, I go deeper. So I start asking questions like, because it's an object. So Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. What exactly is the object? The material reality of that object. When was it created? Where was it created? And then comes, Shivam. How is it used, this object? Is it a cup? Is it a pot? What was the purpose of it? How was it used in those days? Was it a decorative item? Was it a functional item? Was it to declare a political position? Was it economically useful? Was it politically useful? And then comes Sundaram, the artistic aspects of it, which I would like to see. Is it more pretty? Is it crude? Is it refined? Does it refer to a particular form of artwork? Is it related to other forms of artwork? Is there any foreign influence? So I use these frameworks. So I use the Desha Guna Kala framework. I use the Satyam Shivam Sundaram framework. I have another framework called Lakshmi, Durga, Saraswati, the three goddesses of India, which is Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth. So I say, does an art object have an economic basis? What is the economic story of that object? Because if you build a temple, it needs money, it needs resources. Where did this money come from? Where the resources came from? The material resources, the human resources. Then there's a political. Was there a political will to build it? Who built it? Why did kings build temples? Why did the kings build temples? Why did North Indian kings build different types of temples? South Indian build different types of temples? How did architecture change when the Muslims came to India? How did the sultans, the early sultans of India, build mosques which were very different from the mosques built by the Mughals? What was the difference? Mughals had very close relations with Rajputs. Did the Mughal art change because of the Rajputs? Did the Rajput art change because of the Mughals? So politics becomes important. Then comes, of course, Saraswati. Saraswati is the goddess of the arts and knowledge, and I try to understand it from a philosophical point of view. Is there a philosophical statement being made here? Is there something deeper? Is there a technological revelation being made here? So the philosophical aspects of a art form. So I use these three frameworks: Desha Kala Guna, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, Lakshmi, Durga, Saraswati. These are my go-to things to study any art object. When you are writing an answer, it's related to the previous thing. How you study is how you answer. You ask yourself, does it have, what is its historical basis, what is its geographical location, where does it come from, what are the economic reasons for it, what is the political reasons for it, what are the philosophical and aesthetic reasons about it. So let's take an example. If somebody asks you to comment on the Chola bronze statue of Shiva Nataraja, you have to ask historically, when was it created. It was created roughly around the 10th century, around the Chola period in Tamil Nadu. It's made of materials which are found bronze. So where did they get the bronze from? Which means that we had not only mining and smelting technology, we also had artistic. So this is which you will get from the stories. Then it comes to the philosophical. What is Shiva representing? How is the Chola bronze image different from other images of dancing Shiva? Obviously, they're familiar with the Shiva stories, they're familiar with the Ganga stories. Ganga doesn't flow in Tamil Nadu. So, how did the idea of the Ganga reach Tamil Nadu? It is not there in early Sangam poetry, it is not there. So, it's obviously an idea that comes later. We also know that this is the time when did it come through the Pashupatas and the Kapalikas who were in central India. Around this time, you find Shiva ideas even in Southeast Asia. So you suddenly understand that the one Shiva Nataraja statue makes you think about the objects at different levels. And then, of course, there's the philosophical aspect of it. Why is Shiva chosen? How did the rise of the Shiva iconography differentiate it from the earlier Jain art which was there? And you realize the Jain art is a very static art. The sages are always shown seated and standing, while Shiva is shown dancing. So there is mobility, there's something else happening over here. You realize that Shiva is a god who dances and participates in human life, engages in human life, and then you realize the original meaning of the word is bhakti, engagement. So there is a shift in society from a Jain society, which was far based on withdrawal, the principle of withdrawal from the world and taking care of monks who withdrew from the monks, to the worship of a god who engages in social issues. You see a cultural shift manifesting in an artistic shift, which is expressed by the king who sponsors the image of the Shiva Nataraja. So that's how I would write the answer. Fifth question is, what are the relevant sources for aspirants to look for subjects? I think before you look for sources, you have to have a clear framework in your head as to what you are looking for. Rather than reading cover to cover, I would recommend people first make a list of topics and what you want to learn in each topic. If your questions in your mind are clear, which is I feel most students don't even know, they don't even think about what is art, what is culture. The same is true for physics, chemistry, biology. I don't think people ask fundamental, what is physics, what is chemistry, what should the table of content be. I would invest a lot of time in making the table of content, and having made the table of content, I will then start looking for the books that have these answers. NCERT textbooks are reasonably good but not sufficient. I will of course recommend my book because I've written it in the form of tables. It's almost like writing notes so that to aid memory, because the whole book is designed to aid memory. It is not giving you long bhashans and long essays. It is to aid memory and giving you the databases. And if you follow the rules of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, Lakshmi Durga Saraswati and Deshakala Guna, you can write an answer on anything. There are other books written on culture. Wikipedia is a fairly decent source online because you don't need an in-depth understanding. So that's fairly good for, I really think browsing on a Wikipedia, and there are many YouTube, not the UPSC channels because they repeat, everybody says the same thing. That's why Wikipedia is a good place to go to for an easy, quick, hyperlinked answers. Well, every subject is dry if you hate it. My definition of hard work is very simple. Work that done with reluctance is hard work. If you're not curious, you will never learn anything. And UPSC, you can always get a job and be unhappy with the job because you think the job ends with getting the exams and getting the job. Really, curiosity is a way of being, and you have to be curious about subjects. And art and culture is something that you have to be curious about because art and culture is about your life. Are you curious about your house? Are you curious about the clothes you wear? Are you curious about the kitchen in your house? Are you curious about how your house is managed? How does money come into the house? How is money spent? What are the rituals that you do in your house? Do you know the daily rituals of your house, the weekly rituals of your house, your monthly rituals of your house? What are the belief systems in your house? How do those belief systems manifest in stories, symbols, rituals? How are your belief systems different from your neighbor's belief systems? How has life changed in your family as they migrated from rural areas to urban areas? When you go back to the village, what are the practices that are seen? What are the religious beliefs that you have? What caste did you come from? What was the traditional practices that your caste did? Social hierarchy, what were the political powers they had, what were the privileges they had, economic realities of your families. If you start connecting everything in this world to your life, then suddenly the study subject becomes important. A subject like numismatics, if you're talking about money, we're talking about 2,000 rupee note coming in and going away, demonetization. The moment that happens, I would study a chapter on numismatics, and that becomes important. When a bridge falls down in Bihar, my first question is, when was the first bridge built in India? Why were Indians reluctant to cross rivers? Why we have words like Sarayu Par Brahman, crossing of the river is important, crossing of the sea is important. Why did Ram build a bridge rather than just sailing across to Lanka? These are the questions that will come in my mind. Did the Chola kings build bridges? What are the first bridges in India? How did we build bridges? These are, if you don't ask these questions, how did armies cross from North India to South India? How did they cross the Narmada River? Did they use boats? Did they use elephants? Crossing from North India to South India for a very long time was not easy. That's how you start thinking. And once you're curious, the world opens up for you. So a subject is dry. Why is your girlfriend or boyfriend interesting? Because you're curious about them. Only when you're curious about them, because you want to know them emotionally, physically, and that makes you curious. And studies, even education is something like that. If you're not curious about life, then you live a very tragic existence. As Greek philosophers often said, that a life unexamined is a tragic life. And I think that's what education is about. While yes, you will get a job, but that's not the end of it. You still have to live for another 80 years happily. And even at the age of 80, you find people completely lost because all their lives they were just memorizing subjects to win in examinations and then wondering what to do with that victory, because they realize the dopamine rush lasts for barely 24 hours.